Well, US President Joe Biden is no more in the race. Well, he's still in government, of course, but he's no more in the race to be the next president of the United States. So he's staying at the 46th president. Now, he's endorsed his vice, almost deja vu playing out now, his vice, Kamala Harris, to be the candidate eventually for the Democratic Party and vie for the presidential election. It's still a couple of weeks, months to the main action, but this has obviously changed the outlook of the build-up to the election and the outcome of that election. Talk about global politics experiencing a major shift. But we have joining us on the program this morning someone who can help us understand what is playing out here and what to expect. Mr. Adebayo Oluwake is a global affairs analyst, and he joins us virtually this morning. Hey, welcome to the Morning Brief, Mr. Oluwake.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
I want to start from, well, this one. So a lot of people, it was obvious to a lot of people, he's 81. I mean, it's a no-brainer. If you're in the civil service, you shouldn't be in the corridors of office. Talk more of right there in the middle of it. So for a lot of people, this was a no-brainer. But then seeing that he took a while to take this decision, and people are applauding him and saying, well, this must have been a tough decision to make. Well done. Was it really a tough decision to make, really?
Yes, I think for President Biden, it was a tough decision. The reason being that he would most likely have been looking at what kind of legacy he would like to leave behind, the first. And then secondly, usually in the United States, as you know, most presidents often go for a second term. It's rare to have a president who would not go for a second term. So if you don't go for a second time, it's like not normal. So I think for those two reasons, this will have been a tough decision for him. For you and I who were watching from afar, this should have been, like you said, a no-brainer, because it's not more about his health. Sorry, it's not more about his age, but it's actually about his health. And, you know, we've seen President Biden falter several times when he had to address public gatherings. We've seen him, you know, lose focus. We've seen him forget things, you know, and for the president of the United States, who has the powers, not just to declare war, but also to order the detonation of atomic weapons. This was becoming frightening, not just for the world, but for Americans themselves. And I think for us, therefore, looking from afar, it shouldn't have been a difficult decision. But for him, looking at his legacy and looking at the tradition in the United States, where presidents often went for second terms, of course, it was a difficult decision.
So I'm wondering, sir, is this going to be he's endorsed Kamala Harris, of course, but we haven't seen that endorsement as well from Barack Obama. The party is a bit divided at some level and united at some level when you talk about the top Dems, especially in Congress. How easy will it be for the party to now decide on nominating Kamala Harris to, you know, see how she can slug it out with Donald Trump?
You've just asked me the most difficult question, but I'll try to answer it from two perspectives. First of all, exactly what you asked, and then secondly, just look a little bit into history. First of all, the party normally gives a ticket to an incumbent president. The second-term ticket is usually given to an incumbent president. And so I think President Biden, now not having pulled out, is essentially trying to keep that tradition going, even though Kamala Harris is not an incumbent president, but she's the vice. But by President Biden pulling out and then endorsing Kamala Harris, he's trying to say, hey guys, you wanted me out of the race, now I'm out of the race, but you have to give me something back in return. I get to nominate who should replace me. This is the way I interpret it. So he brings in Vice President Harris, you know, trying to put the party back under pressure in order for the party to concede something to him. Now, how easy will it be to nominate to give the ticket to Vice President Kamala Harris. For now, this is still in the realm of speculation. We have had now, if I go back to history, we have had only 2 incidents like this in the history of the United States. One happened in 1952 when President Harry Truman, who replaced President Roosevelt, became president after President Roosevelt died. And then Harry Truman pulled out of the presidential elections, having gotten the ticket. He hadn't gotten the ticket, but it was taken for granted that he was going to get it. So, but he pulled out of the election because there were so many reports that his candidature was not going down well with Americans. Remember that it was President Truman who detonated atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki to end the Second World War. And while that stopped Japan, apparently Americans were very uncomfortable with the fact that atomic weapons were used, right? Truman did a lot of good things as well. He set up the IMF, the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the Marshall Plan that rebuilt Europe after the war. But I think Americans were very, very uncomfortable with the fact that they used atomic weapons. And so he was quite unpopular, and it was told that he was not likely to win, so he pulled out. Now, Lyndon Johnson also pulled out of the race in 1968. Now, the interesting thing about all of this is that when President Truman pulled out of the race, he was replaced by a governor, Adlai Stevenson, and then Stevenson unfortunately lost the election to President Dwight Eisenhower. And then when Johnson pulled out of the race, he was replaced by Hubert Humphrey. Hubert Humphrey was quite popular, but nonetheless, he lost to Richard Nixon. Now, the interesting thing about this is that both of them, Harry Truman and Lyndon Johnson, were both Democrats, and their replacements lost the subsequent elections. So I don't know if this will play in the minds of the Democrats as they go to their convention starting on August 19, and whether with this weight of history, so to speak, on their conscience, they will be confident to give the ticket to Vice President Kamala Harris.
And speaking of sentiments in the camp of the Democrats, some say that Vice President Harris comes with the experience of having been VP and, of course, having access to campaign funds, during this presidential campaign before Biden stepped down. And that she also comes with sharp debating skills as well to stand up to Trump. But the question is, can she, overcome the sentiments of gender, racism, and sexism? And will she be able to make history as the first ever female president of the United States?
Yeah, those are very good indices for us to ponder. I believe that Vice President Harris does have this advantage, truly, that she's been in the White House for close to 4 years. She studied President Biden closely. But while that is an advantage, don't forget that there are those who would also say that she shares in whatever problems or weaknesses the administration may have faced or may have. Having been in the White House for close to 4 years, for instance, she's been accused of not having handled the immigration issue very well. And you know that the immigration issue is something former President Trump is actually playing up seriously in the US now. If you watch the Republican convention, he made so much out of so many illegal people crossing the border, rapists and criminals from other countries and so on and so forth. And so that's something Vice President Harris will have to deal with. Secondly, there's the Ukrainian problem. The immigration issue is a domestic issue. The Ukrainian issue is an international one, foreign policy-wise. And not a few people in the US believe that while it was good to support Ukraine, the United States has not set any benchmarks and has not set any objectives. Even if you looked at the former Chairman Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Milley, he himself asked the question in public, and he said, what would victory look like for Ukraine? That the armed forces do not like to have ambiguous orders. They have to have specific orders. And he was translating that into the political class for them to ponder, what will victory look like? We are giving everything to Ukraine, but what do we want Ukraine to achieve for us to be persuaded that we have achieved our objective? Up till as you and I speak this morning, there are no clear benchmarks on the side of NATO as to what victory would look like, especially when the Russians are controlling over 100,000 square kilometers of Ukrainian territory. So VP Kamala Harris would also have to deal with that. Now, looking at her strengths, yes, she was an attorney, general of the state of California. She's a very good prosecutor, or she was, and therefore she's a very good debater, because you cannot be an effective prosecutor if you cannot debate, efficiently. So this is one major strength people feel that the VP would have if she was their candidate and if she did take on President Trump. But we'll see exactly how this plays out. But I think that on the whole, the fact that she was a former prosecutor and the fact that she's just, I think, 3 percentage points behind President Trump could be the strength that she will bring onto the ticket if she is given the mandate to run.
So I imagine former President Trump coming up with new, well, I call it nicknames now that it's likely going to be Kamala Harris. So no more Sleepy Joe or Crooked this. I imagine what it would look like or what it would sound like. But the point I'm trying to make is the game plan or the strategy obviously has to change now. But I want you to speak to this. So there's a global politics part. There's America also trying to get its act right. America is challenged on different fronts. So speak to this. Is this a master stroke in the real sense of it, or a master flop disguised as a master stroke? Some people think, it's now very easy for Trump to win. Some think, well, this was a good semi-last card if you play cards very well. So what do you think it is? A master stroke in itself, in reality, or master flop disguised as a master stroke?
Okay, let's look at the master stroke. It would be a master stroke for the Democrats to have a seamless transition in the National Convention. And this would probably be the biggest, strength for them, because they want to avoid division and rancor. And so there's that group within the Democrats who feel if we give the ticket to Kamala Harris, straightforward, we won't have any rancor. It will just be seamless, and we can immediately get a momentum and go after Trump. Now, a master flop would be how they manage this convention. Because we know that there are several candidates also. I cannot reel off their names now off the top of my head, but there are several candidates who have indicated that they want to challenge for the presidential ticket. And the question would be, if you take the master stroke of having a seamless convention and just going straight to Chicago and giving the ticket to Harris, how will those guys take it? Remember that when the Democratic establishment gave the ticket to Hillary Clinton against Bernie Sanders, who was the most popular choice, especially of young people, the young people did not turn out to vote. And even though Hillary Clinton still had 3 million votes more than Trump, she didn't have enough electoral colleges, and therefore she lost the election to President Trump. So if you give this ticket to Kamala Harris, and of course, it comes out as a master stroke because you eliminate disgruntled people, problems, campaigns, divisions, and so on. Not knowing how those who genuinely wanted to also give it a shot would react may not be known until the day of the election. And if they go the way that the young people did when Bernie Sanders wasn't given the ticket, even though he was the most popular candidate, the Democrats might just be in for a very big surprise. And Trump might easily coast to victory. Now, on the Trump side, I think the biggest shot that President Trump had, and it's rather unfortunate, was the fact that there was an attempted assassination on his life. So that he survived that good enough, and then it has given him a momentum. That has really given Trump a momentum. That has given him some sympathy, even on the side of those who normally don't like Trump. And if you look at the Republican convention, and if you watched President Trump at that convention, he looked like a different President Trump. He was not brash, he was not brutish, he was not vindictive, He allowed Nikki Haley and all his other opponents with whom he had very sharp disagreements to come onto the podium and address the convention. He's been seen lately with a lot of pictures with African Americans trying to project a different Trump. He started saying, look, this is God who saved me. He's been playing up the religious card. And so I feel strongly that at this moment, President Trump has a strong momentum. How that will play out, of course, we don't know, because the two parties essentially are struggling for voters who haven't made up their minds. But let's see what will happen, whether all of this for the Democrats will be a masterstroke or a masterflow.
You seem to be implying that former President Trump is now born again with that near-death experience. But clearly, very interesting weeks and months to witness. And of course, for the good of global politics, we hope it turns out well. And of course, turns out well for us here in Nigeria. But I'd like to thank you so much. You provided such brilliant insight into the recent happenings. We're speaking with Global Affairs Analyst, Mr. Adebayo Oluwake, on this latest development in the U.S. Thank you once again, sir.
Thank you for having me.
We'll take a moment now, and when we return, we'll talk about the devices you have in your pocket. Some even have like 5 on them right now. How are we handling tech? What are some of the things we should look out for? Opportunities, dangers. Well, Miss Techie joins us on the show. Stay with us.